is in your order of service, and it's real easy to sing. So once we get going, you might not even need the paper. And if you need or want to move, we have aisleways and a lot of options. And those words are childlike and childish. If we move, we're not childish. We might be childlike, and it doesn't stick. It's only for a moment. So if you don't want to turn around because you're going to get dizzy, everybody practice this. That's all you have to do, okay? We come from the mitten, living in the mitten. Go back to the mitten, turn the world around. Lake, we come from the lake, living in the lake. Go back to the lake, turn the world around. We come from our center, living in our center. Go back to our center, turn the world around, and sit down.
Somebody's calling my name. Welcome. Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is John Benarowitz. I'm a member of the fundraising committee. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. Please join us for coffee, bagels, and conversation after the service downstairs. A member of the membership committee will be at the visitors table if you have any questions. And at this time, I'd like to invite any first-time visitors to stand and let us know where you are from and how you heard of us. We would like to meet you.
I was invited by my friend Patrice Foley. I actually used to go to this church as a young kid. I've recently started going to the Christian church, Brightmoor over in Novi, but I'm like, so I'm like shopping around, kind of. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. It's your name? Okay. Yeah. Oh.
I'm Marty Merrill, and my son, who's in high school, he's long gone from high school now.
All right. Well, thank you. Welcome.
My name's Matt. Didn't have a huge church background growing up, but I was kind of looking into it, so originally found you guys on Google and Facebook. I do have some videos here, but that just started from here a little while ago, so she's the inside source of it.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks. Well, welcome all three of you. During the service, as a reminder, during the service we have supervised nursery for babies and toddlers and religious education classes for the older kids. If you have questions, please see Natalie here in the front row, blue sweater. For more information about those programs. And if you need to leave the service for any reason, there are 2 locations in the building where the service is being broadcast live, simulcast, and usher can direct you. Let's remember that we are a welcoming congregation. We welcome all humans regardless of race, sexual orientation, belief system, and age, even the small children that are fidgety and make noises. These little humans are our future, and we welcome them while they are in the meeting house. And now we have a couple announcements. Natalie, did you have an announcement about church friends? Yeah.
So today,
I'm not sure it's on.
I'll just talk loud.
Okay.
So today is the last day for registering for Church Friends. Church Friends is an opportunity to grow friendships between older members of our congregation and little younger members of our congregation to kind of grow our church family and our connection. So there's registration forms downstairs. This is, again, the last day, so if you can get those forms back to me before you leave church today, that would be awesome. And then I will contact you. My goal is to contact you by Tuesday. So by Tuesday, you'll know who your church friend is, and then we'll actually have our first exchange next Sunday. And if you have any questions, I will be around. You can come talk to me.
Libby? Yeah.
Is this, yeah, it's on. Okay, I'm Libby Berger, and speaking on behalf of the Social Justice Committee. This morning, many members of the several members of the Social Justice Committee packed all those backpacks that we've been asking for months. We got 90 of them. Our goal was 75. And Joni and Jim Tedesco are taking those over to Lighthouse right now. Another not quite so exciting bit of news is you've probably been following the ICE deportations in the area. There was John Garcia, I believe was his name, who just missed the deadlines for DACA. He came just a little bit too early and has been deported to Mexico after 30 years. There is also Ded Rinsbergai from Albania, who came here 19 years ago. He's married. His wife has multiple sclerosis. He is her caretaker. He has never had as much as a traffic accident and has been working with ICE, I guess with ICE, for citizenship, doing all of the paperwork, everything. He thought he was just fine, and now he is being deported. I have a script if you would like to call ICE on his behalf. I've got several of these. I'll be in the church, right in the back of the church, right after service. There's also a GoFundMe page because, of course, he's the only fundraiser in his family, and so they have no money. So that's on my Facebook page. You could find that, and then just anything else. Central United Methodist downtown is handling sanctuary for them, and there are likely to be other needs and such that will come up in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Now we have hymn number 131 in this book. Love Will Guide Us. Now we'll do the litany reading for the chalice lighting. As Unitarian Universalists, we adopt the question mark as our unofficial symbol.
What words would make it plain? What oracle could put it just so?
We welcome all questions, encourage all people to become teachers, and offer their answers and truth.
What version of Scripture could provide? Which science writer could find the metaphor so compelling that everyone at once would understand?
Each answer is accepted and respectfully questioned again.
Which poet could turn a phrase like that precisely? Why should anyone wish that his meaning was singular? Why should anyone imagine that the final truth must glow and illuminate into the deepest corners?
Why are the questions of those who live at ease so different from those who live in constant struggle? Why would anyone run away from the answers? As we light our official symbol, our chalice, may we consider the necessary wonder and practice of love. This chalice light guides with both peace and unrest. As we collectively gather questions, answers are guided by its light on the journey.
I'd like to welcome the children and invite them to come up and stay at the steps. Every minute counts. We'll talk about that another time. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Michael Murphy, is going to be your co-teacher today. He's going to come downstairs with you guys. Everybody up here?
He's our favorite.
Yeah. So today we have a special story to tell, and Mr. Murphy gets this prop.
I am going to start the story.
And it's a once upon a time story.
So once upon a time, there was a guy that lived in this house, and right across the creek, which was maybe this wide, was another house, and nobody was living there for several months. And now I'm the guy in the one house, and I like to keep my outside real nice. I keep my grass cut. I cut it this way, and I cut it this way, and my garden, my vegetable garden, everything nice and neat in a row. And finally, somebody moved in at the house across the creek from me, and I got real excited until I met her.
So I'm that kind of person that's really involved in bioregionalism and being an environmentalist, and I like to plant like wildflowers everywhere and perennials, some that come up in March, some that come up in July, and then I like to leave everything because it's so organic, if you know what I mean. And it's just so lovely. I spend a lot of time in my garden, so it's just really nice.
It was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. So finally, I called a friend I know that's a carpenter, and I said, I need your help. Now, this guy's a little quirky, but I've seen his work. I know he does a good job. I called him up, and I said, I want a fence. I want a 12-foot fence across so I don't have to look at this ugly house anymore. So the guy says, well, why are you building a fence all of a sudden? And I told him why, and he says, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. It'll be done by the time you get home from work today. So I'm off to work. I feel great. Then I come home, and there's no fence. There's a bridge. And coming across the bridge is somebody with wildflowers and a picnic basket.
It was so nice of my neighbor to surprise me and build a bridge so that we could spend more time together. That I made him a breakfast, a lunch in my picnic basket, and I couldn't wait till he came home so that we could get to know each other better and talk about why we love nature.
And it wasn't that ugly, and she does bake nice cookies.
So, the moral of the story, I wonder, Natalie, I'm putting you on the spot, but could you tell us one of the morals or meanings of the story? Do you know one of the meanings of the story?
Sometimes you never know who might be your friend.
That's a good one.
I got one.
What's yours, Jonathan?
The guy who the person wanted to build a fence. He didn't like what he was saying because you should be thoughtful to your neighbors, so he built a bridge instead.
Oh, yes. So that bridge builder was a special surprise. Well, that's very good, and I'm glad that you listened so well. And I'm going to ask somebody to carry the chalice, and we're going to sing the song that we've been singing for a couple of weeks in the order of service.
Emmett's gonna carry
Okay, Emmett. And our song, there you go, Emmett, thank you.
for this week's offering. The financial and time resources generously gifted to our congregation allow for the message and actions of the liberal church to be shared both within and outside these walls. If you are a first-time visitor, please consider yourself our guest.
This week in the news, and maybe in the news in your household as well. Some of it might have been joyful, some of it might be weighing heavily on your heart or your spirit. We invite you to come up to the microphone and introduce yourself by first name and share the piece of information that you would like to bring more energy to from us, the congregation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joan Daly. It's good to see you. My joy is coming out of hibernation on Thursday for Daytimers, which is our senior group. We had a very nice meeting. Paul Bailey brought his son visiting from Alaska with his family, and that was great. So I just want to take this, my annual invitation to anyone maybe this year reach that magical mark of senior to come and join us on Thursday at noon. We have a nice time, mostly socializing.
And here's to Alaska and Iceland.
Hi, I'm Kelly Petrie. Our joy is that we're finally out of illness for a month, so that's really nice to see everyone. Also, our sorrow is our neighbor who Mike Powers. He went in the hospital. He had a heart attack over the holiday and beginning of January. So it's been 3 weeks, and he had quadruple bypass surgery, and he's just starting to wake up after surgery 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, and he's like Dante's best friend. So we're hoping that he pulls through and everything's okay.
Hi, my name's Beverly, and my husband Mert who is actually sitting in the back row. Today is his birthday, so so if you see him, wish him a happy birthday.
All it would take is one note. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mert. Happy birthday to you. It's also Dorothy Richards' birthday. Happy birthday, dear Mert and Dorothy.
Hi, my name's Zara. I may look a little different this week. I was blonde last week. Two joys. One is, I don't know if you're aware of it, but today is Squirrel Appreciation Day. So if you have not appreciated your squirrels, please do so. Seriously, I just wanted to thank all of you. I'm celebrating 10 weeks after a pretty big life-changing event. I was very close to making a permanent decision to end my life 10 weeks ago.
Well, I have a joy and a sorrow. I'll start with the joy. Joan Daly from the Daytimers already told a little bit about Paul Bailey Jr. I'm Nancy Bailey, married to Paul Bailey. We've gone to this church 18 years now. We've been members most of that time. Anyway, Paul Bailey Jr. Was in the Navy, and there was a Navy base in Iceland. And that's where he met his wife. So they came to visit us this week. They came Tuesday and stayed until Friday. Actually, they also went to Texas because Paul Bailey Jr.'s mother lives in Texas, his brother lives in Texas, and his sister lives in Texas. And then they came to see us. So on Tuesday, I made a dinner and we invited Charlotte Davis to come. So they got to meet one of our members, Charlotte Davis. Charlotte has had us over for dinner, Paul and I, various times. We've never had her over, so I think it was time to have her over. So she enjoyed visiting with the folks from Iceland. And then on Thursday, we went to Daytimers and took them with us. So Paul Bailey Jr., of course, is American, and his wife is from the Philippines. And a very pretty girl, right? Very pretty gal. Very nice. And their son, Eiler. Now, and Cherokee is the mother, and Eiler is the son, who's about 14 or 15. I'm not sure how old he is. He's in the 10th grade. How old is he, Paul? 15. Okay, so I think the Daytimers really enjoyed having them, and I told the three of them, everybody's going to ask you all kinds of questions about Iceland. So what we do at Daytimers is we sit around the table, like a square table downstairs, put all the tables together, and we go around and explain what we've been doing since the last time we were there. So of course the Iceland people got a lot of questions, and it was really quite interesting. So, but Paul Bailey Jr. gave me a cold. So that's why I sound funny. So I've been sitting in the back of the church by myself. I don't want to give it to other people. So that's our joy. And our sorrow is that one of our people from our church died a few days ago on January 18. I don't know how many of you folks knew Rosemarie Fertig. Rosemarie developed some sort of cancer. I don't know what kind. Beverly Mannheimer, who's 92, and I went to visit her a couple weeks ago. And she really appreciated our visit. And I do encourage you to go see sick people when they're sick. And so we were going to go back to see her as soon as the relatives from Iceland left. But the day before they left, on Thursday, Rosemarie died. So anyway, she's at the Heaney Sunquist Funeral Home, which is at Grand River and Farmington Road. The address is Farmington Road. And if you knew her, I'll talk about her a little bit, maybe you'll remember who she is. If you want to go see, they have visitation today from 1 on, and tomorrow at 10 is the funeral. Beverly and I knew her pretty well. Beverly, huh? Pardon me? The funeral is at 10 on Monday. The funeral's at 10 on Monday. I looked in the Free Press. I could not find, or the Free Press Detroit News. I couldn't find anything in the paper at all, but I've got this information from the funeral home. Rosemarie was a very smart lady. She had a master's degree, and she worked in her field. I'm not quite sure what her field was exactly. Social work. Social work. Okay, social work. And Paul and I, my husband and I, brought her and Beverly to church for a couple of years, the last couple of years, until she became ill. And then before that, Beverly was good friends with her, and they did all kinds of things together, right, Beverly? You know, just as chums. So anyway, if you're interested in going to see her, she she was legally blind. You could hardly tell when she would come to church. She was not a member, but she came here regularly. She used a cane, and she got around really good. You could hardly tell she was blind, but she was legally blind. And so that's why she always had to get a ride from everybody. It was Beverly was driving her, then we were driving her. And so anyway, I just thought I would tell you about Rosemary, a very nice lady.
I'm Sarah. Just a quick joy. My baby, the church's baby, turned 1 this week.
If she's the church's baby, you and George should get out quite often. And I would light this candle for all those joys and concerns that did not get expressed formally here this morning, but those connections that you make during coffee hour or during the week. So yesterday marked the 1-year mark of the 45th president's inauguration, and I would like to read this poem by Marge Piercy that acknowledges what most of us would have liked to do, and some of us did, and some of us may be even marching this afternoon. It's called The Low Road. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up, they can bust you, they can break your fingers, they can even burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't blame them from doing. How can you say no to them? Alone, you can fight. You can refuse. You can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. Four, you can play bridge if you knew how, and start an organization. With six, you can rent a whole house and you can eat pie for dinner with no seconds. Or you could hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration, 100 fill a hall, 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter, 10,000 power and your own paper or Facebook page, 100,000 your own media, 10 million your own country. So it goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they have said no. It starts when you say we and know what you mean, and each day you mean one more. Last year's election was the most contentious that we have experienced in some time. Many family and friends around the country found themselves in a quagmire of confusion on how to conduct themselves with people who thought and often voted differently than themselves. Some families went to the extreme of building emotional walls that would keep family members from spending holidays and birthdays together, and some of those wounds still haven't healed. Today we're going to share some insights. Sometimes I think I'm going to repeat this phrase just that says, consider this. Some insights and some considerations into why so many good people are divided by politics and religion. Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, has gathered some varied research that explains why most people think they have the righteous mind, which is the title of his new book. To be able to raise yourself to a certain place above name-calling or belittling those who think differently than us, I think is an act of maturity. And that, I believe, everyone here has that good intention within themselves. Understanding that some people stretch their cognitive development and some cognitive development may be slowed or arrested could be an important transparency for us to understand others. Jean Piaget, the Swiss psychologist, was known for his work in child development. Cognitive children younger than 6 and 7, usually, probably our kids are a little lower in understanding these kind of differences of what they see, because they're very bright, as you can tell. But usually 6 or 7-year-olds can't conceptualize the difference of volume of water in different shaped glasses. Aren't I lucky that I have matching glasses at my house? So if they see this, I don't know if you can see this. That looks like a lot of water, doesn't it? It's a lot of water. Whoa, and you would think if you poured that in there, you wouldn't get as much water. But look, you actually get more. It's kind of like if you give a child money and you say, do you want 100 pennies or do you want this dollar bill? Well, of course they want 100 of anything. And so sometimes if you're stuck at that cognitive stage where you're thrown off by visuals, then when you add that transparency and put it over opinions about politics and science and issues that are very important, you will be thrown off also, because a lot of what happens is visual. Visual, and what you all, many of you would call it now, is what kind of spin do people put on it. So looking at people's cognitive development is very important. That conversation of volume is not innate. And so you aren't born as a baby, and if you left that baby and just fed it, they're not going to figure all this out. It's trained and taught. As you get older, you understand that it doesn't matter what size glass you put it in, it's going to be the same amount of water. So political opinions are similar. Take global warming, for instance. Many of you have had this exact argument. It doesn't make sense to people because they can't conceptualize how winters can be so cold if there's global warming. So you're saying warming, so everything should be warmer. The demonstration of how jet streams move around the earth and change patterns and seasonal activities causing extreme weather all entails global warming. But it escapes some people whose minds or cognitive stage is not ready. Intuitively, it does not make sense to some people, so no amount of reasoning or science is going to change that perception. Now be careful here, because I just put all the Unitarian Universalists that are so smart on a slippery slope, because I talked about reason and intuition. And in that particular example, it started to sound like, oh, that's because intuition isn't real. We'll keep going. If each of us is willing to move beyond the 3-year-old cognitive stage, when we are not ready yet for fairness, and of course we are, we could come up to at least the 6 or 7-year-old stage of being willing to have arguments and to play all kinds of games and use civil words and civil rules and work out things together. Then we can arrive closer to the civility of building conversational bridges to meet others halfway across, rather than building those fences and walls to keep the neighbor on the other side that doesn't keep his lawn the same way you do and probably has no other shared common opinions. We like to see ourselves as using moral reasoning and to arrive at rationality and a good endpoint of development. A rationalist is described as someone who believes that reasoning is the most important and reliable way to obtain moral knowledge. We can see ourselves as caterpillars changing into butterflies as we grow into our rationality through experiencing and added to those experiences education. But now let's add intuition into that discussion of understanding how others arrive at points of view, and actually how you do also. Each of us has experienced having a discussion that has turned into an argument about supporting a political issue or a candidate. You probably question the person's ability to reason to arrive at what you perceived was the truth about the topic. That's another strange word, isn't it? We often put it in our mission statements at Unitarian Universalist churches. We search for the truth, as if there's one, and once we find it, then we will have it, because we can see it and hold it, and there was only one in the first place. But French cognitive scientists Hugo Mercier and Dan Spencer reviewed research on motivating reasoning in social psychology and errors of reasoning in cognitive psychology. If we could see reasoning as evolving, not as a way to find the truth, but to help us engage in arguments and help us with persuasion and use a little less manipulation, then we could see that whatever side of an issue that you take, it's truly still more about your gut feeling rather than reasoning. In other words, we all participate in a confirmation bias. These cognitive scientists came to this conclusion that it is very hard to come up with a way to teach students to look for evidence against their favored view. They will find evidence to support their view. So there are some things that happen, and they are called triggers. I'm sure all of you would have different definition of certain triggers. Today, when I heard the choir singing, one of my triggers, when you use the phraseology, my children's children, isn't that one of the triggers? We're not just working to change things and make things better for us. We're working because we can see that the generations that will come after us are going to be impacted. And so there's certain words and certain ideas, such as communism and racism and taboo ideas and disgust and temperance. Oh boy, let's not touch that one. And what we do ecologically, all of those are triggers, and so they hit us deeper, and we want to stand up for those issues in our truth. This kind of reaction, this visceral reaction, that doesn't mean that we stop using our reasoning, but that we realize that most times we are using reasoning to support those arguments that were based on those gut and intuitive views. There is a place for gut feelings to be used. Often we use that as our guide when we are consuming something or making a consumer choices, or maybe when we're making an interpersonal judgment. Yet, to use the gut feeling for public policy only, to use the gut feeling and ignore laws and science, to use the gut feeling and not add reason, that is where we get into trouble. Jonathan Haidt compares each individual. Here's where my scientists are going to test me. I don't have a meeting during coffee hour this week, so I'm not protected. John Haidt compares each individual as a neuron and therefore limited. A neuron is good at one thing, summing up to that stimulation coming from other places to decide whether there's a fire to pulse along its axon. And so that neuron alone by itself, all you little neurons alone by yourself, you're not always that smart. But when you're put together, or when our brain is put together with all the neurons, there is a system that emerges, and that's more flexible than one single neuron, and the group of neurons is much smarter. So continuing that analogy, one reasoner is often good at one thing, finding evidence to support the position he or she already holds, usually for intuitive reasons. When your reputation is at stake, when self-interest is at stake, then individuals don't lead toward producing and being open-minded and truth-seeking. They get out their phones and they start Googling, looking for the right article that's going to prove them right. Something that's not political. Should I get the flu shot? Or even worse, should I give permission to give the flu shot to my 93-year-old dad who has dementia in a nursing home? Ugh. I thought I was over making decisions for other people's health when the children were raised. No, it all comes back again. And so We Google, we ask other people, or if you're an introvert, you probably don't go that far, but you still do some of your research. You might not go around asking all of your friends. So, in other words, this group here can be your circle of friends. You felt that there was a common good, and this common good is a place that you want to interact civilly. And so you can help your reasoning here. You can have discussions. I'm sure you can still find somebody in this room to disagree with you. But rather than discounting them or avoiding them, use them as your muse and start asking different questions and say, how did you arrive at that conclusion? What was your experience that had you arrive at that conclusion? You know, when you start asking your friends and families that voted differently than you did last year, I wish it was 2 weeks. Yeah. Not that so quick, 3 more years. You will be surprised at the answers you received. People wanted change. People didn't want status quo. They didn't trust the government. And so they didn't get status quo, and they did get change. And they probably still don't trust the government. So what do you search for when you listen to that answer? Is it the common good? Can you arrive at a different view possibly? Jonathan Haidt's foundational conclusion is that there are 2 different types of cognition, intuition and reasoning. He stopped contrasting those. I would encourage you to stop contrasting those, because how could you be any different if you're saying that intuition isn't a part of your system? If you see somebody, if I'm standing here and I feel a shadow behind me, it's either that I'm going to have to leave this church and go to something that's a little more psychic oriented, or there's somebody there that I should address to either give attention to or run from. And so that's a gut feeling. That isn't based on reason. And so we can't prioritize one over the other. Moral emotions are one type of moral intuition, but more moral intuitions are subtle. They don't rise to the level of emotions. In his words, he says, intuition is the best word to describe dozens and hundreds of rapid, effortless moral judgments and decisions that we all make every day. Only a few of these intuitions come to us embedded in full-blown emotions. So this book, it's amazing. It's one of those books, open, oh. You can't distill it down to 15 minutes. What an insult to anybody's book that's over 300 pages. But the complexities and levels of psychology that are at work in the relationships that all of you have with friends and coworkers and neighbors, they are vast. Each of us sticks to our opinion. How we use that information and how we discount people or continue to be engaged with people that are of different opinions of us, I think is the foundation and the fabric of growing and changing and improving a society. In 2010, there were 3 cultural psychologists, all right, you're gonna love this, or I did, I hope you do, who published an article that was called "The Weirdest People in the World." Wait, you think that they'd be Unitarian Universalists? No, this is what weird means. Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. So that is weird. These people set all the statistics and at least are typical or representative in making generalizations about the nature of humans, at least all over the United States. So this simple generalization can be made. The weirder you are, the more you see a world full of separate objects rather than relationships. So Western, educated, industrial, rich, democratic. All of that is what people use to base studies on. So you come up from this idea. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to a workshop that works like this. You sit next to, boy, I could have done this today, Charlotte. Oh. You sit next to somebody you don't know that well. You're not going to do it. We don't have time. And you answer this question 20 times. You say, I am. So, I am Leonetta. I am a person with curly hair. I am whatever and whatever and whatever. And so then you just listen, and then the other person says a phrase. We're going to try this sometime. I'm not here next week, so come next week, because it won't be next week, because I know you're not too. But Americans answer differently. They say, I am happy. I'm interested in dance. I'm personable. East Asians list their relationships and their roles first, and what communities they're part of, and where they work. And so they put themselves in a context of a we nature. Thinking styles are different, and these weird people, Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic, detach from the focal object in its context and think more analytically. It's not all bad, right? Bad, good is. Bad, good is. It just is. But non-weird people, this is when you want to be a non-weird person. See, the whole context and how the parts are relational. So Kant, as a philosopher, could be characterized as a weird philosopher, focusing on rules, individualistic moral systems. This would make sense to govern a society of individuals. Non-weird cultures would see morally as not having reduced to one single rule. Confucius, for example, addressed a variety of relationship-specific virtues and duties, such as proper treatment, even of one's subordinates. So I don't know if you're tracking, God help you if you are, with where my mind goes with that. But even if you decided to be a little hierarchical about the people that don't agree with you, Confucius and non-weird people would say that even there's a proper treatment of who you might perceive as your subordinate. Weird people focus on morality that offers protection for individual rights, and they're concerned about harm and fairness. And so what do you notice? I mean, I notice this when I watch the weather. There can be a snowstorm coming and, whoa, you better go to the grocery store and call in sick and go get new tires and wear those crampons on your feet, because it's going to take over our area. These poor weather people, they have to be extremely dramatic. I'm just thinking about job opportunities. But anyway. But they operate on fear. How can you not be harmed? Non-weird people work within context, groups, institutions. And so the morality is a socio-economic area where groups of people serve people first. Yes, they protect the needs of the individuals, but they see the needs of the collective. So that's when you start getting into places of dreamers. And the people that were listed by Libby this morning, each one of those people has a story. When you think about the government being shut down and whose fault is it, and the blame game and the complexities and the people that are hurt by the blame game because we're not seeing things in a bigger context. So, if somebody were to hand me a microphone and let's say I'm 87 and a half and I have my family gather around me and that's going to be my last word, and their words, please don't just give me one, not even at the end.
But give me the microphone and say, Leonetta, what would have been your one sermon? Today's message has my one sermon, and it's just really easy. I think it's 3 words. I, to, we. That's what we're shifting to. I, to, we. That's what I want my teenage granddaughters to shift to. I want them to stop thinking less about straightening their hair and more about the 91-year-old grandma. Now we move to I, to, we. We move from 75 backpacks to 90 backpacks. I, to, we. We hurry up a little bit more and we take a little less time at doing what we need to do for ourselves because we know we need to get out there in the world and we don't have to be perfect before we get out there in the world. We were fortunate enough on Friday night, Michael received tickets to the VIP charity auto show event. So he calls and says, oh, you need to dress up. I'm like, let's see, what fancy top will I put with my black pants? And I'm not going to wear stiletto heels, so I'm all covered on that. And we went to the auto show, and I was the least fanciest dressed. It was sequins. It was appropriate. You would have been proud. But it was these slacks. Because it was more important to be at the event and use the tickets that his boss had paid a lot of money for than it was to be perfect. To lower our egos a little less and get out there in the world and do a little more. So here are a few questions to end today's message. Can I attempt to understand the variety of moral diversity beyond judgment? When you're talking to anybody, can I meet on a bridge that brings together ethics beyond just Western secular society? Could we add our moral language in an ethic of community? Can we move from that I to the we? Do we value rights? And do we look at the degree that our rights will increase human welfare? Or do we value rights and justice because it's just important for us? Can weird and non-weird people learn from one another and speak with civility on the bridge? Or should a wall be built to keep us away from one another? You know what the answers would be? And the follow-up sermon will be on transactional leadership. In the meantime, if you want to start practicing it, what do? I, to, we. So be it. Namaste. Would you please turn to hymn 414. You can remain seated. It's kind of a quiet hymn. As we leave this friendly place, love divine to every face. May the kindness which we learn guide our hearts till we return. And so as you move out into your Sunday, you may choose to stop by the funeral home. You may choose to try to get to Lansing. You may take a nap. And all of it is fine. Deepak Chopra talked about this in meditation. 3 things could happen. You could ruminate and make your list of whatever. You could fall asleep. Or you could fall into the gap of a collective consciousness for a short time. And beautifully, all of that is okay. So don't forget, the nap is also on the list. Have a wonderful week.